The sky above New York looked different than it had 15 years ago. Gone were the towers that once scraped the clouds. In their place stood makeshift shelters and crumbling buildings that nobody had the resources to repair. The asteroid had changed everything. It came without warning, struck the Pacific Ocean, and sent waves of destruction across every continent. 40% of humanity died in the first year. The rest survived in a world that felt like it was slowly dying. Commander Jake Morrison stood on what remained of a military base in Colorado, watching the horizon. He was a tall man, with graying hair, and tired eyes that had seen too much death. His family had been in Seattle when the waves hit. He tried not to think about them anymore, but some nights the memories came anyway. Now he led what was left of Earth's Defense Coalition, a fancy name for scattered soldiers guarding food warehouses and trying to keep the peace. The morning started like any other, with reports of food riots in Denver and power failures across 3 states. Then, the radar operators noticed something. Ships were entering Earth's atmosphere. Big ships, dozens of them. Jake rushed to the command center where screens showed massive vessels descending through the clouds. They were beautiful in a strange way. Silver and smooth, shaped like teardrops falling from heaven. They made no aggressive moves, just positioned themselves over major cities and waited. "Should we fire?" Captain Ryan Hayes asked. He was Jake's second in command, younger but sharp. His hand hovered near the weapons console. "Hold," Jake said. His instincts screamed danger, but Earth had nothing left to fight with. If these aliens wanted to attack, a few missiles wouldn't stop them. A transmission came through on all frequencies. The face that appeared on screen was humanoid but not human. Pale blue skin, large dark eyes, and a gentle expression. When it spoke, the words were perfectly translated into every Earth language. "People of Earth, I am Overseer Vecnor of the Cauldron Confederation. We received your distress signals from the asteroid impact. We have traveled far to offer assistance. We bring food, medicine, and technology to help rebuild your world. We ask nothing in return but friendship." Cities erupted in celebration. After 15 years of suffering, someone was offering help. Ambassador Nicole Sanders, Earth's diplomatic representative, immediately began coordination with the Cauldron. Within days, massive relief zones appeared across every continent. The aliens set up food synthesizers that could create meals from basic elements, medical stations that healed injuries in hours, and construction equipment that could raise buildings overnight. Jake watched millions of desperate people flood into these zones. He couldn't blame them. Children were starving. The sick were dying. The Cauldron offered hope when Earth had none left. Dr. Lisa Chen was one of the first humans allowed aboard a Cauldron ship. She was a xenobiologist, one of the few scientists Earth still had with proper training. Lisa had lost colleagues in the asteroid impact, but never lost her optimism. The chance to meet an alien species was the opportunity of a lifetime. The Cauldron ship was incredible. Clean, advanced, filled with technology that seemed like magic. Overseer Vecnor himself gave her a tour, explaining their food synthesis process and medical scanners. Lisa took notes frantically, her mind racing with possibilities. "Your species shows great potential," Vecnor said, his large eyes studying her. "With our help, Earth will not just survive, but thrive." "Why help us?" Lisa asked. "You must have spent enormous resources to come here." "Because we can," Vecnor replied simply. "The Cauldron believe advanced species have a duty to help those in need. We have saved many worlds. Earth will be another success." It sounded too good to be true, but Lisa wanted to believe. The alternative was watching her species slowly die. The Cauldron had one requirement for receiving aid. Humans had to register in their database. They needed names, biological scans, and medical histories for efficient resource allocation. Most people didn't care. They needed food and medicine more than they needed privacy. Jake noticed the scanning equipment in the relief zones was military grade, more advanced than necessary for simple registration. When he asked about it, the cauldron explained it helped them customize medical treatments for each individual. Still don't trust them? Ryan asked one evening, as they reviewed security reports. I don't trust anyone who shows up offering miracles, Jake said. But what choice do we have? Weeks passed. Earth's condition improved dramatically. The cauldron were everywhere, always helpful, always generous. They introduced neural implants that could monitor health in real time, preventing disease before it started. Thousands of humans volunteered for the procedure. Ambassador Sanders herself got one and praised the technology publicly. Jake refused the implant. So did Ryan, and most of the military personnel. Something felt wrong, though Jake couldn't explain what. Lisa noticed it first. People with the implants seemed different, not obviously, but subtly. They agreed with Cauldron's suggestions more readily. They volunteered for work assignments without question. When she mentioned it to Overseer Vecnor, he explained it was just relief at having medical security. Lisa wasn't sure. 3 months after the cauldron arrived, Ryan broke into Jake's office late at night. His face was pale, and he carried a datapad with shaking hands. I intercepted encrypted cauldron communications, Ryan said. Took weeks to crack their codes. Jake, you need to see this. Jake read the messages in growing horror. The cauldron weren't talking about Earth as a relief mission. They referred to it as Sector 7 Harvest Zone. Humans were listed as viable labor specimens. There were discussions about processing rates, transport schedules, and mining colony quotas. They're not here to save us, Jake said quietly. They're here to take us, Ryan nodded. The implants aren't medical devices. They're control mechanisms. The relief zones are processing centers. They're selecting the strongest and healthiest humans for something. For what? Slavery. They've done this before. Jake. I found references to 12 other species. The cauldron find dying civilizations, offer help, make them dependent, then harvest them like crops. Jake felt rage building in his chest. After everything Earth had suffered, after all the death and pain, these aliens thought they could just take what remained of humanity? They smiled and offered food while planning to put humanity in chains? We can't let this get out yet, Jake said. If people panic, the cauldron might accelerate their plans. We need evidence, allies, and a way to fight back. Fight back? Ryan laughed bitterly. With what? They have ships that make ours look like toys. Jake stared at the message on the screen. Somewhere in those words was a truth the cauldron didn't realize. They thought humans were weak, broken, and desperate enough to accept any terms. They thought wrong. We're survivors, Ryan. We survived the asteroid. We survived 15 years of hell. We'll survive this too. Jake's voice was hard as steel. The cauldron expect us to be grateful. Let's show them what human gratitude really looks like. Outside, the silver cauldron ships hung in the sky like false stars, beautiful and deadly. Earth had been given a choice between slow death and comfortable slavery. Jake Morrison was about to give his species a third option: retribution. 6 months passed since the cauldron arrived. Earth looked better on the surface. Buildings rose from ruins, and food was plentiful in the relief zones. But Jake Morrison saw the truth beneath the pretty lies. Millions of humans now had implants. Those people worked harder, questioned less, and followed cauldron instructions without hesitation. The transformation was slow but steady. Jake built his resistance carefully. He recruited people he trusted, soldiers who remembered what it meant to be free. Captain Ryan Hayes led intelligence operations, intercepting more cauldron communications. Lieutenant Amanda Price, a sharp intelligence officer with red hair and sharper instincts, mapped the cauldron surveillance network. They worked in shadows, pretending to cooperate while planning rebellion. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A woman named Megan Torres stumbled into a resistance safe house in Arizona, half-starved and terrified. She had escaped from a cauldron facility that officially didn't exist. "They took us at night," Megan said, her voice shaking. 20 of us, from the relief zone. Said it was for advanced medical treatment. They put us in a ship and flew to a facility underground. Jake leaned forward. "What did they do to you?" "Tests. Physical examinations. They measured our strength, our endurance, how well we followed orders. Some people got different implants. Ones that made them completely obedient, like robots wearing human faces." Megan pulled out a data chip. "I stole this before I escaped. It has everything. Files, transport schedules, locations of 12 other species they've done this to." Ryan plugged the chip into a secure computer. What they found made Jake's blood run cold. The cauldron had perfected a system over centuries. They found civilizations in crisis, offered salvation, then slowly converted populations into workers. The implants started as health monitors but gradually increased control. The strongest humans were being prepared for mining colonies 40 light-years away. The rest would maintain Earth as a production facility. "They've enslaved entire species," Amanda said, scrolling through files. "The Varan from Tau Ceti. The Kelix from the Andromeda sector. Billions of beings, working in cauldron mines and factories." Jake studied the data late into the night. The cauldron weren't conquerors in the traditional sense. They were parasites, feeding on desperate civilizations. They made victims dependent, then trapped them in comfortable cages. Dr. Lisa Chen was harder to convince. She arrived at the safe house angry, summoned by Jake through back channels. She had spent months working with the cauldron, believing in their mission. "This is propaganda," Lisa said, looking at Megan's evidence. "The cauldron have saved millions of lives." "Look closer," Jake said quietly. "Really look." Lisa spent hours reviewing the files. Jake watched her face change as understanding dawned. The medical research she had helped with wasn't about healing. It was about making humans more controllable. The implants she had praised were chains, disguised as gifts. "My entire research team," Lisa whispered. "They all have implants now. I recommended the procedure to them." Her hands shook. "What have I done?" "You didn't know," Jake said. "Now you do. Help us fix it." Lisa looked up, and Jake saw something new in her eyes. Rage. "What do you need?" "A way to break the implants." "Can you reverse engineer them?" "I'll need help." "Dr. Kevin Park. He's a neuroscientist. Still independent. No implant." Within weeks, they had a small team working in secret. Kevin was a quiet man, with thick glasses, who worked miracles with technology. He dissected captured implants and found their weakness. The devices communicated on a specific frequency. With the right countersignal, they could be disrupted. "It won't be permanent," Kevin warned. "But it will give people back control of their own minds for a while. Long enough to understand what's been done to them." Jake authorized the first test on a volunteer, a young man who had gotten an implant 3 months ago. When Kevin activated the countersignal, the man blinked, like waking from a dream. "I can think clearly," he said, wonder in his voice. "I couldn't before. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't care. They made me not care. They had a weapon now." But time was running out. Ambassador Sanders appeared on every broadcast, smiling her implant-controlled smile, announcing the cauldron's generous new program: universal health care for all humanity. Mandatory implantation would begin in 90 days. For our own good. For our future. The resistance had 3 months to save their species. Jake split his forces. Ryan led teams that raided cauldron facilities at night, freeing captured humans and stealing technology. Amanda coordinated intelligence, tracking cauldron movements and communications. Lisa and Kevin worked on expanding the countersignal's range. Chris Bennett, a former software engineer with a gift for hacking, studied Cauldron computer systems looking for weaknesses. The raids grew bolder. A facility in Moscow was hit, freeing 200 humans scheduled for transport. A Cauldron ship in orbit was infiltrated by commandos who stole navigation data. Each operation was risky, and they lost people. Jake attended too many funerals for soldiers who died fighting for freedom. The Cauldron noticed. Overseer Vecnor increased security and gave speeches about extremist humans who opposed progress. He sounded hurt, like a parent disappointed by ungrateful children. It made Jake want to shoot him, but the resistance grew. Freed humans spread the word. Soldiers who had stayed neutral joined the fight. Ordinary people, who refused implants, volunteered as spies and couriers. A movement was building, but so was opposition. Many humans didn't believe the truth. They had implants already and couldn't think clearly. Or they were so desperate for the Cauldron's help that they rejected evidence. Civil conflicts erupted. Brother fought brother over whether the aliens were saviors or slavers. Ambassador Sanders called Jake a terrorist on live broadcast. Commander Morrison endangers everything we've built. The Cauldron offer us the stars, and he offers only fear and violence. Jake didn't respond publicly. He was too busy planning the impossible. Brandon Cole, a former Marine with scars across his face and arms, led the combat teams. He was a big man who moved with surprising quiet and killed Cauldron guards with cold efficiency. "They wanted to make us slaves," he said once. "They're going to learn humans make terrible slaves and worse, enemies." The resistance discovered that Cauldron had begun loading implanted humans onto transport ships. Thousands at a time, told they were going to new colonies where they would build better lives. In reality, they were headed to mining facilities where they would work until their bodies failed. Lisa managed to infiltrate one transport. What she saw haunted her. Humans standing in perfect rows, faces blank, waiting to be shipped across the galaxy like cargo. Children among them, families separated and reprogrammed. She barely escaped before the ship launched. "We're running out of time," she told Jake. "They're accelerating the schedule. They know we're fighting back, so they're taking who they can, while they can." Jake called a meeting of all resistance leaders. They gathered in an abandoned subway tunnel in New York, 50 men and women who represented humanity's last free will. "The Cauldron think we're beaten," Jake said. "They think we'll accept their chains because we're desperate and weak. They don't understand something about humans." He looked around the room at tired, determined faces. "We don't stay down. We adapt. We fight. And we win." Amanda projected a map showing Cauldron positions. "They have 70 ships in orbit and facilities on every continent. We have small arms and hope." "Not quite," Chris said with a grim smile. "I found something. Pre-impact military installations thought destroyed, hidden deep underground. Experimental weapons programs. Some might still work." "What kind of weapons?" Ryan asked. "The kind that could level cities. Antimatter missiles, AI-controlled drone swarms, prototype stealth ships." The military was developing them before the asteroid hit. For the first time in months, Jake felt hope. Real hope. "Can we access them?" "Already started. We'll need time and people. But yes." Jake made his decision. "We hit the Cauldron hard and fast. Before mandatory implantation begins, we show them that humans aren't prey." Lisa pulled Jake aside after the meeting. "I found something in Cauldron biological databases. They weren't always the predators. Their species was enslaved once, thousands of years ago. They overthrew their masters and swore never to be victims again. But somewhere along the way, they became the thing they fought against. So they can be beaten," Jake said. "They were beaten before," Lisa confirmed. The resistance had 90 days until mandatory implantation. Jake planned to use every single one. The Cauldron expected gratitude for their generous gifts. They were about to learn that humanity's gifts came wrapped in fire and fury. The entrance to Site Omega was buried under 300 feet of Colorado rock and debris. Lieutenant Amanda Price stood at the blast doors with a team of engineers, staring at what looked like a solid wall of collapsed tunnel. According to pre-impact records, this facility held some of Earth's most advanced military projects. If those records were right, and if anything survived, the resistance might have a chance. Explosives won't work, the lead engineer said. We'd bring down the whole mountain. Then we dig, Amanda replied. We have 60 days before mandatory implantation. I want this facility open in 10. They worked in shifts, around the clock. Jake Morrison visited the site whenever he could, watching progress with anxious eyes. Every day, more humans were loaded onto Cauldron transport ships. Every day, the window for saving Earth grew smaller. Chris Bennett worked on a different problem. The software engineer had set up operations in an abandoned server farm, surrounded by screens and stolen Cauldron hardware. He was building a virus, a digital weapon designed to cripple alien systems. Their technology is more advanced than ours, Chris explained to Jake and Ryan during a briefing. But that's actually a weakness. Their systems are so complex and interconnected that one failure cascades into many. I'm creating a virus that exploits those connections. 10. Will it work? Ryan asked. In theory, yes. In practice, I won't know until we deploy it. Chris grinned tiredly. Welcome to experimental warfare. Dr. Kevin Park made his own breakthrough. Working with Lisa Chen, he refined the counter-signal that disrupted Cauldron implants. The new version could be broadcast over wide areas, freeing thousands of people at once. The effect is temporary, Kevin warned. Maybe an hour before the implants reassert control. But during that hour, people will be themselves again. They'll understand what's been done to them. An hour is enough, Lisa said. An hour of freedom can start a revolution. Jake ordered the counter-signal integrated into every resistance operation. During a raid on a Cauldron processing center in Beijing, they broadcast it across the facility. 2,000 implanted humans suddenly woke up. Some cried. Some screamed. Some attacked their Cauldron captors with bare hands. The resistance smuggled as many out as they could before Cauldron security responded. The freed humans spread word of what they had experienced. The implants hadn't just controlled actions, but emotions. Humans were made to feel grateful to their captors, happy to serve, content to be slaves. Learning the truth broke something in people. Many joined the resistance immediately, burning with the rage of violated minds. But not everyone believed them. Ambassador Sanders gave speeches calling the testimonies lies and propaganda. Half of Earth supported the resistance. The other half thought they were terrorists, destroying humanity's only hope. Cities descended into violence as humans fought each other over what freedom meant. On the 10th day, Amanda's team broke through into Site Omega. The facility had survived, protected by layers of reinforced steel and concrete. Emergency power kicked on as they entered, revealing corridors that hadn't seen humans in 15 years. What they found exceeded every hope. The military had been developing weapons for wars that never came. Antimatter missiles capable of destroying capital ships. AI-controlled drone swarms that could overwhelm defenses. Electromagnetic pulse weapons that could fry electronics from orbit. And most valuable, 12 prototype stealth fighters designed to be invisible to radar and sensors. Laura Kim was the first pilot to see the stealth fighters. She was a small woman with quick reflexes and a fearless attitude. Before the asteroid, she had been training for the Space Force. Now she stood in a hangar staring at sleek black ships that looked like they were built from shadows. "They're beautiful," she whispered. "Can you fly them?" Jake asked. "I can fly anything," Laura said confidently. "Give me a week to learn the systems." Jake gave her 3 days. They didn't have time for perfection, Ryan coordinated weapons testing at a remote site in Nevada. The antimatter missiles worked, producing explosions that lit up the desert like miniature suns. The drone swarms functioned, but needed programming. The electromagnetic pulse weapons were functional, but had limited range. "It's not enough to win a war," Ryan said. "But it's enough to start one." Chris completed his virus and named it Prometheus Protocol. The name came from the Greek myth about stealing fire from the gods. Fitting for a weapon that would steal the cauldron's technological advantage. "The virus needs to be uploaded directly to their central systems," Chris explained. "That means getting close to their fleet. Very close." "The stealth fighters," Jake said. "Exactly. If Laura's team can penetrate their formation and upload the virus, their ships will start eating themselves from the inside. Weapons offline, shields down, navigation corrupted, and then we hit them with everything we have," Ryan finished. The plan was insane. Suicide, most likely. But Jake saw no alternative. In 45 days, Cauldron would begin forced implantation of every human on Earth. After that, resistance would be impossible. Brandon Cole trained assault teams for ground operations. His Marines would need to seize Cauldron relief zones simultaneously across the planet while the space battle raged overhead. Timing was critical. "We get one shot at this," Brandon told his troops. "The Cauldron think humans are weak. Show them what weak looks like when it's armed and angry." Lisa discovered something crucial in stolen Cauldron biological data. The aliens had once been slaves themselves, conquered by a species called the Dreth thousands of years ago. The Cauldron Rebellion had succeeded because they learned to use Dreth technology against them. They had literally become their former masters, adopting not just tools but philosophy. "They were victims who became victimizers," Lisa told Jake. "They know slavery can be overthrown because they did it. That's why they're so careful with the implants and slow conditioning. They're trying to avoid the mistakes the Dreth made." "But they made their own mistake," Jake said. "What's that?" "They chose humans to enslave. We're really good at learning from our enemies." The Resistance consolidated forces. Hidden military installations were opened across Earth. Weapons were distributed. Freed humans were trained. The counter-signal was loaded onto broadcast towers, ready to activate globally. Amanda's intelligence network mapped every Cauldron position. 70 ships in orbit, arranged in a defensive sphere. Ground facilities on 6 continents. Approximately 3 million implanted humans, already loaded onto transports, waiting for the signal to depart for mining colonies. "We need to free those people first," Lisa insisted. "Before the shooting starts," Jake agreed. The night before the attack, resistance teams infiltrated transport ship docking facilities. They planted Kevin's counter-signal transmitters and set them on timers. When the battle began, those 3 million people would wake up aboard ships meant to carry them into slavery. Jake hoped they would fight. Humans usually did when given the choice between death and chains. Laura and her squadron of pilots trained relentlessly. 11 other men and women had qualified for the stealth fighters. 12 ships against 70 Cauldron vessels. The odds were absurd. "I've faced worse odds," Laura lied cheerfully. She hadn't. But confidence was important. Ryan prepared the antimatter missiles and conventional warships. Earth had 6 functioning military vessels left from before the impact. Ancient destroyers and cruisers that barely qualified as spaceworthy. Against Cauldron technology, they were obsolete. But obsolete ships could still carry antimatter missiles. 2 days before the attack, Overseer Vecnor appeared on global broadcast. His pale blue face looked concerned, almost sad. "My friends on Earth, I speak to you with a heavy heart. Extremist elements continue to spread lies and fear. They attack the facilities built to help you. They murder Cauldron personnel, who came in peace. This cannot continue." He paused. "Therefore, we are accelerating the Universal Healthcare Program. Implantation will begin immediately in all relief zones. This is for your protection." Jake watched the broadcast from a command bunker deep underground. The Cauldron knew something was coming. They were racing to implant as many humans as possible before resistance could stop them. "We attack tonight," Jake said. "Ready or not." Commanders scrambled to accelerate plans. Laura's squadron would launch at midnight. Ryan's fleet would follow 30 minutes later. Ground teams would strike simultaneously. The countersignal would broadcast globally, freeing every implanted human for one precious hour. Chris uploaded the Prometheus protocol into Laura's fighter. One ship, one virus, one chance to level the playing field. "Don't get shot down before you upload it," Chris said. "Wasn't planning on it," Laura replied. Jake addressed the resistance one final time over encrypted channels. Thousands of men and women across Earth listened to their commander speak. "The cauldron came to our world when we were weak. They offered help and hid chains behind their smiles. They thought we would accept slavery because we were desperate. They were wrong." Jake's voice was hard as iron. "Tonight, we show them that humanity bows to no one. We didn't survive extinction to become slaves. Fight hard, fight smart, and make them regret ever hearing our planet's name." At midnight, 12 stealth fighters launched from hidden airbases. They rose through Earth's atmosphere like shadows. Invisible to cauldron sensors, Laura sat in the lead cockpit, hands steady on controls, heart pounding. Behind them, the largest battle in human history was about to begin. The cauldron expected gratitude for their generosity. They expected compliance from broken people. They expected to harvest Earth like all the other worlds. They never expected humans to bite back. The stealth squadron crossed into orbit and headed toward the cauldron fleet. Laura armed the Prometheus protocol. In her headset, she heard Jake's final command. "Give them hell." Laura smiled. "Copy that. Hell incoming." Laura Kim's stealth fighter slipped through the cauldron defensive perimeter, like a ghost through walls. Around her, 11 other pilots maintained perfect formation, their ships invisible to alien sensors. The cauldron fleet hung in orbit above Earth, 70 massive vessels arranged in protective layers. They looked invincible. "Target acquired," Laura whispered into her radio. The flagship, Overseer Vecnor's personal command ship, sat at the center of the formation. Beginning. Upload. Run. Her fighter accelerated toward the flagship. Cauldron point defense systems scanned space, but found nothing. The stealth technology held. Laura's heart hammered as the distance closed. 5 kilometers. 3 kilometers. 1 kilometer. "Uploading now," she said. The Prometheus protocol streamed from her ship into the cauldron network. Chris Bennett had designed it to spread fast, jumping from ship to ship through their communication links. Laura watched her screen as the virus propagated. 1 ship infected. 5 ships. 20 ships. Then alarms screamed. "They detected the upload," Laura's wingman shouted over the radio. "Breaking stealth in 3, 2. The night lit up with weapons fire. Cauldron ships opened up on positions where human fighters had been seconds before. But Laura's squadron was already moving, scattering like birds from a cat. "Evasive maneuvers," Laura ordered. "Ryan, we need that fleet now." 30 light seconds away, Captain Ryan Hayes heard the call. He stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Liberty, one of 6 ancient warships humanity had left. Behind him, loaded in launch tubes, were 12 antimatter missiles. "All ships, engage," Ryan commanded. The human fleet accelerated toward the cauldron formation. It wasn't impressive. 6 old destroyers against 70 advanced alien warships. But the destroyers carried weapons that could crack planets. Cauldron ships turned to face the new threat. Their targeting systems locked on, and then the Prometheus protocol hit their central computers. Weapon systems crashed across half the cauldron fleet. Shields flickered and died. Navigation computers rebooted in endless loops. Ships that had been coordinating perfectly began drifting, their crews frantically trying to regain control. "Fire!" Ryan shouted. Antimatter missiles launched from the human fleet. They crossed the distance in seconds and struck cauldron capital ships. The explosions were beautiful and terrible. Matter meeting antimatter. Energy release beyond calculation. 3 cauldron ships simply ceased to exist, vaporized instantly. On Earth's surface, the battle erupted simultaneously. Dr. Lisa Chen activated the global counter-signal from a hidden broadcast station. The pulse swept across the planet, reaching every implanted human. In relief zones across 6 continents, millions of people suddenly woke up. The fog lifted from their minds. They remembered who they were and what had been done to them. Some collapsed weeping, others screamed with rage. Most grabbed whatever weapons they could find. Brandon Cole led his Marines through the main relief zone in New York. Cauldron guards, surprised by the sudden chaos, tried to restore order. They failed. Implanted humans who had been docile moments before attacked with savage fury. People who had been slaves for months took revenge on their captors. Secure the facility, Brandon ordered. His teams moved with practiced efficiency, clearing rooms and freeing prisoners. Cauldron guards fought back, but they were trained for peacekeeping, not war against an enraged population. Similar scenes played out globally. Tokyo, London, Cairo, Sao Paulo, Mumbai. Every relief zone became a battlefield. Humans who had suffered under cauldron control remembered the violation of their minds and bodies. They showed no mercy. Jake Morrison coordinated operations from his command bunker. Screens showed battles across Earth and in orbit. The plan was working, but barely. Half the cauldron fleet was disabled by the virus, but half still functioned, and they were angry. Cauldron are regrouping, Amanda reported. Infected ships are being isolated. They're adapting to the virus. Ryan, press the attack, Jake ordered. In space, the Liberty shuddered under cauldron weapons fire. Ryan's fleet closed the distance, trading shots with alien vessels. 2 human destroyers exploded, their crews dying instantly. But each sacrifice let the remaining ships advance closer. Laura's squadron darted through the chaos, dogfighting cauldron interceptors. The stealth advantage was gone. But the fighters were fast, and their pilots desperate. Laura destroyed 2 enemy ships before taking fire that ripped through her left wing. Laura's hit, her wingman called. I'm fine, Laura said through gritted teeth, fighting controls. Still flying. The battle devolved into brutal close-range combat. Human ships and cauldron vessels circled each other, firing at point-blank range. The virus continued spreading, but cauldron crews manually overrode infected systems. They were learning, adapting. On Earth, Overseer Vecnor watched his perfect plan crumble. He stood in his command center, surrounded by frantic advisors. This wasn't supposed to happen. Humans were broken, desperate, weak. They should have accepted salvation gratefully. How are they fighting? Vecnor demanded. Where did they get these weapons? Unknown, Overseer, an aide replied. But they're causing massive damage. Ground forces are requesting permission to bombard population centers. Vecnor hesitated. Destroying human cities would render Earth useless as a processing world. But if he didn't stop the rebellion, he would lose everything. Begin bombardment, he ordered. Target resistance strongholds. Cauldron ships in orbit turned their weapons toward Earth. Energy beams lanced down, striking military bases and command centers. Cities burned. Thousands died in seconds. Jake's bunker shook as a beam struck miles away. They're targeting civilians, Amanda said, horror in her voice. Then we end this faster. Jake replied. Chris, can we expand the virus? Already working on it, Chris said from his server farm. His fingers flew across keyboards. I'm pushing an update through Laura's squadron. It'll hit Cauldron systems harder. But there's a risk. What risk? The virus might destabilize their reactors. Ships could explode instead of just going offline. Jake made the calculation instantly. Cauldron ships exploding in orbit would rain debris on Earth. But continued bombardment would kill millions. Do it. Chris uploaded the enhanced virus. It spread through the Cauldron network like wildfire through dry grass. Ship after ship experienced cascade failures. Reactors went critical. Explosions bloomed across orbit as Caldron vessels tore themselves apart. But the destruction wasn't one-sided. Ryan's fleet was down to 3 ships. Laura had lost 4 pilots. On the ground, Brandon's forces had taken 30% casualties securing the New York facility. The price of freedom was measured in human lives. In the transport ships docked at orbital stations, 3 million implanted humans had woken from the counter-signal. They found themselves locked in cargo holds, scheduled for transport to distant mines. The ships were automated, crew minimal. The captives didn't wait for rescue. They broke down doors, overwhelmed security, and took control of their prison ships. Some tried to navigate toward Earth, others, lacking training, simply aimed at the nearest Cauldron vessel and accelerated. Transport ships rammed into Cauldron warships. The transports were unarmed and fragile, but mass at high velocity was mass at high velocity. Collisions destroyed both vessels, but freed humans died on their own terms rather than as slaves. Jake watched the sacrifice with grief and pride. Broadcast to all transports. Tell them to disengage, head for safe orbit. We'll get them down. But many transports didn't receive the message, or chose to ignore it. They had tasted freedom again, and decided death was preferable to slavery. Ship after ship made suicide runs. The Cauldron fleet, already reeling from the virus and human warships, faced attack from unexpected angles. Overseer Vecnor's flagship was struck by 3 transport ships in succession. The shields failed. Hull breaches vented atmosphere. The mighty vessel that had crossed 40 light-years began tumbling in a decaying orbit. Evacuate, Vecnor ordered. He didn't understand. How had this happened? Humans were supposed to be grateful. They were supposed to accept their place. Laura's damaged fighter limped back toward Earth's atmosphere. She had uploaded 2 more virus payloads before taking critical damage. Her cockpit alarms screamed warnings about failing life support and damaged engines. Laura, eject, Ryan ordered from the Liberty. Not yet, Laura said. 1 Caldron cruiser remained operational, its weapons trained on New York. Laura's fighter still had 1 antimatter missile. She locked target and fired. The missile struck the cruiser's reactor. The explosion was visible from the surface. A new star briefly born in orbit. The blast wave caught Laura's fighter and sent it spinning. Now I eject, Laura said, and punched out. Her escape pod fell toward Earth as her fighter burned up in atmosphere. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 40 Caldron ships were destroyed or disabled. The rest had retreated to higher orbit, out of weapons range. On Earth, every relief zone was under human control. Caldron ground forces surrendered or were killed. The cost was staggering. 15,000 human soldiers dead, 30,000 civilian casualties from orbital bombardment, 4 pilots lost from Laura's squadron, 3 of Ryan's 6 ships destroyed. But Earth was free. Jake stood in the ruins of the New York relief zone as dawn broke. Around him, freed humans, helped injured, and mourned dead. Doctor. Lisa moved through the crowd, treating wounded with salvaged Cauldron medical equipment. Brandon's Marines secured perimeter, watching the sky for threats. A transmission came through on all frequencies. Overseer Vecnor's face appeared on screens, broadcasting from an escape pod. He looked confused, almost betrayed. Why? He asked. We saved you. We offered you the stars. Why do you fight us? Jake took the microphone. He was tired, covered in dust and blood, but his voice was steady. You didn't offer us the stars. You offered us chains. You saved us so you could use us. You thought broken people would accept any terms. Jake stared at the alien face on the screen. You were wrong. Humans don't surrender. We adapt. We survive. And we remember. This isn't over, Vecnor said. The Confederation has hundreds of ships. They'll come for you. Let them come, Jake replied. We learned from you. Your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. You expected thanks. You taught us everything we needed to destroy you. This is our gratitude." He cut the transmission. Around him, his people began the work of rebuilding. But Jake knew the war wasn't finished. The cauldron would return, with reinforcements. And when they did, humanity would be ready. They had tasted freedom again. They would die before giving it up. The transmission went out across the galaxy 3 days after Earth's victory. The Keed of Urso. Chris Bennett had taken the Prometheus Protocol virus, combined it with every piece of evidence about Cauldron slavery operations, and broadcast it to all 12 enslaved worlds. The signal carried a simple message. You are not alone. Humanity fights. Join us. Jake Morrison stood in the newly established Free Earth Command Center, watching responses come in. The first reply came from Tau Ceti, from a species called the Varan. They had been under Cauldron control for 40 years. "We received your transmission," the Varan representative said on screen. Its body was insectoid, with 4 arms and multifaceted eyes. "We thought we were alone. You have given us hope. And a weapon. C and 4. And a weapon. Use it well," Jake replied. Within hours, rebellions erupted across Cauldron space. The virus crippled ships and facilities on 12 worlds simultaneously. Species that had forgotten freedom remembered how to fight. The Cauldron Confederation began collapsing from within, but Jake knew Earth couldn't stop with one victory. The Cauldron would regroup, send reinforcements, and crush the rebellions unless humanity acted fast. He called his commanders together for planning. "We take the fight to them," Jake said, "while they're off balance." "With what fleet?" Ryan asked. After the battle, humanity had 3 functional warships, 8 stealth fighters, and whatever Cauldron vessels they had captured intact. "We'll use theirs," Lisa said. She had been studying captured Cauldron ships. "Their security codes changed after the virus, but I found a back door. We can fly their ships." Amanda pulled up star charts. "Intelligence suggests the Cauldron have a major processing facility at Tau Ceti. If we help the Varan liberate it, we gain allies and shipbuilding capacity." "How far?" Jake asked. 12 light years. With Cauldron faster than light drives, about 3 weeks' travel. Jake looked around the table. Ryan, Lisa, Amanda, Chris, Brandon, Laura. His core team, exhausted, but unbroken. Who wants to take humanity's first interstellar trip? Everyone raised their hands. The fleet that departed Earth was small but determined. 5 captured Cauldron cruisers crewed by humans who learned alien systems through trial and error. 2,000 Marines led by Brandon, Laura and her surviving fighter pilots, Lisa's scientific team, Chris with his computers and viruses, Ryan, in overall command of space operations, while Jake coordinated strategy. They arrived at Tau Ceti 3 weeks later to find the system in chaos. Varan rebels fought Cauldron security forces across a dozen moons and orbital facilities. The main processing center hung in orbit of Tau Ceti IV, a massive station where millions of Varan worked, in factories producing goods for the Confederation. "Varan forces are taking heavy losses," Amanda reported. "Deploy fighters," Jake ordered. Ryan, target those reinforcements. Marines, prepare for boarding operations. Laura launched her squadron from the captured cruiser. They streaked toward Cauldron ships that were trying to restore order. The Prometheus protocol uploaded again, and Cauldron vessels began experiencing familiar malfunctions. Brandon's Marines boarded the processing station using Cauldron assault shuttles. They fought room by room, corridor by corridor. Cauldron guards had expected weak Varan workers. They got human soldiers who had learned to fight an advanced species and win. The battle for Tau Ceti lasted 2 days. When it ended, the processing station was in Varan hands. The freed insectoids stood among dead captors, clicking their mandibles in what Jake learned was laughter. "You taught us to fight back," the Varan commander said. "Now teach us to win." Jake did. Over the following months, human advisors trained Viran forces. Lisa helped them understand captured Cauldron technology. Chris taught their programmers to use and modify the virus. Ryan organized their salvaged ships into a proper fleet. And Tau City's shipyards began producing new vessels, not Cauldron designs, but something new. Human engineering combined with Varan manufacturing and Cauldron technology, the first truly multi-species warships. Meanwhile, rebellions spread. The species from Andromeda, the Kelix, successfully drove Cauldron from their homeworld. Other enslaved populations struck at their oppressors. Each victory added ships, soldiers, and knowledge to the growing resistance. Jake found himself commanding not just human forces, but a coalition of freed species. They called themselves the Liberation Alliance, and they had a single goal: end the Cauldron Confederation. The Cauldron fought back desperately. They sent fleets to crush rebellions. They abandoned some worlds to hold others. Their empire was vast, built over centuries. It wouldn't fall easily. 6 months after Earth's liberation, the Alliance had grown to 20 warships and controlled 4 star systems. The Cauldron still fielded over 200 ships, but they were scattered, trying to hold together a fragmenting empire. Intelligence reports located the Cauldron homeworld, a planet called Kaldros, in a system 35 light-years from Earth. It was heavily defended, the heart of their civilization. And that's where they held Overseer Vecnor and the Confederation leadership. "We strike there," Jake announced at a war council that included Varan, Kelix, and 3 other species. "Cut the head off. Their defenses are massive," a Kelix admiral argued. Its translated voice sounded like grinding stones. "We'll take severe casualties." "We will," Jake agreed. "But if we don't end this, they'll rebuild. In 10 years, they'll be back. In 20 years, they'll have learned from their mistakes. We end it now." The Liberation Fleet gathered at a staging area between stars. 50 ships from 7 species, crewed by beings who had been slaves, and decided to be something else. Jake stood on the bridge of the flagship Retribution, a vessel built from scratch in Varan shipyards using combined technology. Laura commanded the fighter wings. Ryan led the cruiser squadrons. Brandon had 5,000 Marines ready for ground assault. Lisa coordinated scientific and technical support. Chris had prepared the final version of the Prometheus Protocol, designed to cripple planetary defenses. They jumped into the Kaldros system with weapons hot. The Cauldron home fleet was waiting. 70 ships arranged in defensive formations around their homeworld. They knew the attack was coming. They were ready to die defending their civilization. "All ships, engage," Jake ordered. The battle was brutal. Cauldron ships fought with desperation born of defending home. Liberation forces pressed forward with fury born of years of slavery. Ships burned on both sides. Casualties mounted. Laura's fighters penetrated the defensive sphere and uploaded the virus. Cauldron planetary shields flickered. Ryan's cruisers hammered weakened positions. Brandon's Marines launched toward the surface. But the Cauldron had learned. They had hardened systems against the virus. Redundant networks prevented cascade failures. Ships that would have died in the first battle survived to keep fighting. Jake watched the casualty reports climb. 10 ships lost. 15. 20. Half his fleet burning or crippled. But they were winning. Slowly. At terrible cost. The Retribution shuddered under weapons fire. "Shields failing," Amanda reported from Tactical. "Keep firing," Jake said calmly. The Cauldron flagship, a massive dreadnought, broke through the Alliance formation and headed directly for the Retribution. Its commander broadcast on open channels. "Surrender, Commander Morrison. You've proven your point. End this before more die." "No," Jake replied simply. The flagship fired. The Retribution's shields collapsed. Hull breaches vented atmosphere. Crew scrambled to seal sections. Jake held onto his command chair. As the ship listed, "We've got hull breaches on decks 4 through 7, Amanda shouted over alarms. Life support failing. Laura's remaining fighters swarmed the Cauldron flagship, buying time. Ryan's cruisers concentrated fire. Antimatter missiles struck the Dreadnought's engines. The massive ship lost power and began tumbling. "Brandon, you're clear for landing," Jake transmitted. On the surface of Caldros, Marines fought through the capital city. Cauldron civilians fled or fought beside their military. Brandon's forces advanced toward the government complex, where Overseer Vecnor and the Confederation Council sheltered. The battle for the city was savage. Building to building, street to street. Species that had been enslaved showed no mercy to their former masters. Some Cauldron fought to the death. Others surrendered. Confused about how the natural order had reversed, Brandon's team breached the government complex. They found Vic Nor in a command bunker, watching his civilization collapse on screens. The Overseer looked old, tired, defeated. "Why couldn't you just accept?" Vecnor asked as Brandon's Marines arrested him. "We gave you food, medicine, peace. All we asked was service. You asked for our freedom," Brandon replied. "Humans don't negotiate on that." In orbit, the battle ended. The Cauldron home fleet was destroyed or surrendered. The Retribution limped in space, barely functional, but victorious. Liberation forces secured the system. Jake addressed the Cauldron from the ruins of their government. "The Confederation is ended. Your military is dissolved. Your enslaved populations are free." He paused, looking at Vecnor. "You will face trial for crimes against 12 species. Your technology will be shared with those you oppressed, and humanity will maintain forces in your space to ensure you never do this again." "You're no better than us," Vecnor said bitterly. "You win and impose your will." "How is that different?" "We're giving people choice," Jake replied. "Something you never did. Species can join the Alliance or go their own way. But slavery ends today." The trials lasted months. Cauldron leaders were judged by representatives from all enslaved species. Some were executed, others imprisoned. A few, those who could prove they opposed the slavery operations, were pardoned. Cauldron civilization didn't end, but transformed. Stripped of their empire, they became one species among many. Their technology, forcibly shared, advanced everyone. Their mistakes became lessons. Jake Morrison stood on Earth a year after leaving it, looking up at stars that no longer seemed so distant. Humanity had gone to space, not as explorers, but as warriors. They had fought for freedom and won. Laura Kim became commander of the Alliance Fighter Corps. Ryan Hayes led the Alliance fleet as admiral. Lisa Chen directed scientific cooperation between species. Chris developed communication networks, linking dozens of worlds. Brandon trained Marines from 7 species in human tactics. Amanda approached Jake as he stared at the night sky. "What now, Commander?" "Now we make sure it doesn't happen again," Jake said. "We stay strong. We stay vigilant. And we remember that freedom isn't given. It's taken and defended." Across the galaxy, species that had been slaves built new futures. They remembered the humans who came from a dying world and refused to bow. They remembered that sometimes the weak win if they're willing to pay the price. And in dark corners of space, other empires heard the story and reconsidered their plans. Humanity had proven something dangerous. Prey could become predators if pushed hard enough. The monument on Earth bore names of everyone who died fighting for freedom. The inscription was simple. They expected gratitude. We delivered retribution. Never again will humanity kneel. Jake touched the cold stone and thought of his family, lost to the asteroid. They would have been proud. Not of the killing, but of the refusal to surrender. Humanity had faced extinction twice, from space rock and alien chains. Both times, they survived. The stars weren't empty anymore. They were full of allies, partners, and species that remembered what humans did when pushed to the edge. The cauldron had wanted to harvest Earth. Instead, they taught humanity to reach the stars on their own terms. That was their gift, unwilling and bitter. And humanity accepted it with fire, fury, and the promise that no one would ever take their freedom again. The war was over. The real work of building a future began. But Jake knew that somewhere, in the dark between stars, other threats waited. When they came, humanity would be ready. Because humans had learned the most important lesson. You don't survive by accepting what others offer. You survive by taking what you need and protecting what you have. The cauldron expected thanks. Humanity delivered retribution.